examining the restricted video's time left behind. You are watching Bodycam Story Vault. Records unsealed.
Sir, step aside. We're here for her. We have information that she's in this country illegally.
I'm not stepping anywhere. This is my hospital. Where's your warrant?
We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement.
You absolutely do need a warrant to enter my facility and detain my staff.
Last warning, move aside or you'll be charged with obstruction.
Where's your warrant? Dr. Michael Sullivan asked the question that would cost IC $11.9 million. The agents had come for Adrienne Hayes, 8-year emergency nurse, Georgia Nurse of the Year, the woman her colleagues called the heart of the ER. They claimed to have information she was in the country illegally. The information was a lie. The nurse was born in Macon, Georgia. Her father had worked at the Macon post office for 35 years. She had degrees from Emory and Georgia State. But Agent Derek Morrison didn't have a warrant, didn't have probable cause, didn't have anything except an anonymous tip and the assumption that a black nurse in scrubs might not belong. Dr. Sullivan, Chief Medical Officer, former Army trauma surgeon, the man who once told a state senator to get out of my ER, positioned himself between the agents and his nurse. This is my hospital. You're not taking anyone without proper legal authority. The security cameras captured everything. The staff gathering behind their CMO. The agents threatening obstruction charges. The moment federal authority met someone who wouldn't bend. $11.9 million. Career destroyed. And a chief medical officer who proved that protecting your people isn't just policy, it's principle. Grady Memorial Hospital never slept. The Level 1 Trauma Center served Atlanta's most critical patients. Gunshot wounds, car accidents, the emergencies that couldn't wait for morning. The emergency department ran on 12-hour shifts, and the overnight crew had seen everything the city could deliver. Adrienne Hayes had worked the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, 12 hours that had included 3 trauma codes, a pediatric cardiac arrest, and the steady stream of patients that defined emergency medicine at a major urban hospital. The pediatric code had been the hardest. 4-year-old boy, drowning incident. They had worked him for 47 minutes before achieving return of spontaneous circulation. He was upstairs now, in the pediatric ICU, alive because of the team that had refused to stop. Hayes had led that team. Senior charge nurse. 8 years in the emergency department. The certifications that proved her expertise, CEN, TCRN, hung on her wall at home, next to the Georgia Nurse of the Year plaque from 2022. Her scrubs still carried the evidence of the night. The particular exhaustion that came from 12 hours of constant crisis. The satisfaction that came from knowing she had made a difference. Her twins, Zoe and Zara, 6 years old, would be waking up soon at her mother's house. Tuesday mornings meant pancakes and cartoons before the school bus arrived. Hayes would sleep for a few hours, then pick them up, hear about their day, pretend she wasn't exhausted. Single motherhood and emergency nursing required a particular kind of strength. Hayes had found it in the same place her parents had found theirs, in faith, in family, in the knowledge that hard work meant something. Her mother had taught elementary school in Macon for 30 years. Her father had sorted mail at the Macon post office for 35. The Hayes family understood service. They understood showing up. Adrienne had shown up every shift for 8 years. Never late. Never absent without cause. The nurse her colleagues called when cases got complicated, when patients got difficult, when the night seemed like it would never end. The heart of the ER. That's what they called her. Not because she was soft. Emergency nurses couldn't afford softness, but because she cared in ways that patients remembered. She was walking toward the emergency department exit at 6:47 a.m. when she noticed the 2 men approaching. Olive tactical vests, 10 cargo pants, black boots, ice insignia visible on their shoulders. They were walking directly toward her. Hayes paused. The automatic doors were 10 feet away. Freedom was 10 feet away. Her car in the parking garage. Her mother's house. Her daughter's. The men stopped in front of her. Adrienne Hayes? Yes. We need you to come with us. Adrienne had shown up every shift for 8 years. Never late. Never absent without cause. The nurse her colleagues called when cases got complicated, when patients got difficult, when the night seemed like it would never end. The heart of the ER. That's what they called her. Not because she was soft. Emergency nurses couldn't afford softness, but because she cared in ways that patients remembered. She was walking toward the emergency department exit at 6:47 a.m. when she noticed the 2 men approaching. Olive tactical vests, Tan cargo pants, black boots, ICE insignia visible on their shoulders. They were walking directly toward her. Hayes paused. The automatic doors were 10 feet away. Freedom was 10 feet away. Her car in the parking garage. Her mother's house. Her daughter's. The men stopped in front of her. Adrian Hayes? Yes. We need you to come with us. Chapter 2. The Entrance. 650 words. Agent Derek Morrison positioned himself between Hayes and the exit doors. His partner flanked to the right, the formation that would provide a second angle on everything that followed. Ma'am, we have information that you're in this country illegally. We're going to need you to come with us for processing. Hayes stared at him. The words didn't compute. Couldn't compute. She had just spent 12 hours saving lives in an American hospital. She had been born in an American city. She was as American as the flag flying over the building behind her. Illegally? I was born in Macon, Georgia. That's what we need to verify. Verify. Her voice carried the exhaustion of the shift and the confusion of the accusation. I'm a registered nurse. I work here. I've worked here for 8 years. Employment doesn't prove citizenship. My birth certificate proves citizenship. My nursing license proves citizenship. The background check this hospital conducted when they hired me proves citizenship. Morrison's expression didn't change. The hospital security camera, mounted above the emergency entrance, captured his posture. Aggressive. Certain. Ma'am, we have information. We need to verify your status. Information from who? That's confidential. You're accusing me of being an illegal immigrant based on confidential information? What information? What source? We received a tip. A tip. Hayes let the word hang in the air. Someone called you and said I'm illegal, and you came to my workplace to detain me? Without checking anything first. We're checking now. No, you're not checking. You're detaining. Those are different things. The automatic doors behind Morrison opened. A security guard, Marcus Webb, 15 years at Grady, stepped through. He had been watching the monitors. He had seen the confrontation developing. Ms. Hayes? Everything okay? These agents are claiming I'm an illegal immigrant. Webb's face shifted. He knew Hayes. Everyone at Grady knew Hayes. She had worked on his mother's case 3 years ago. Chest pain that turned out to be a heart attack. Hayes had recognized the signs, called the code, saved her life. That's not possible. She's been here for years. Sir, this is a federal matter. She saved my mother's life. She's not illegal anything. Step back, sir. Webb didn't step back. He pulled out his radio. Security to emergency entrance. We have a situation. ICE agents attempting to detain staff. Morrison's face flushed. Sir, interfering with federal officers is a crime. I'm not interfering. I'm documenting. And I'm calling for backup. We don't need your backup. We need this woman to come with us. She's not going anywhere until someone with authority tells me what's happening. The radio crackled. Voices responding. Security personnel moving toward the entrance. And somewhere in the hospital, Dr. Michael Sullivan's phone buzzed with an urgent message. CMO to emergency entrance immediately. ICE attempting to detain Hayes. Sullivan was out of his office in 15 seconds. The elevator would take too long. He took the stairs, 4 flights, the same stairs he had run during his trauma surgery days when seconds meant survival. He pushed through the stairwell door on the ground floor. He could see the entrance from here. The agents, Hayes in her scrubs, Webb blocking the path. He had spent 35 years in medicine. He had operated in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm, under fire, with inadequate supplies, on soldiers who should have died. He had built a career on protecting people. He wasn't about to stop now. The automatic doors opened as he approached. The Atlanta morning light spilled into the corridor. What exactly is happening here? Dr. Michael Sullivan stepped through the emergency entrance with the authority of someone who had commanded medical teams in war zones. 61 years old. Silver hair cropped short. White coat over a charcoal blazer and black slacks. The presence that had made surgeons, senators, and now federal agents reconsider their choices. I asked a question. What is happening here? Morrison turned. He saw the white coat, the chief medical officer badge, the expression that had survived Desert Storm and 3 decades of hospital politics. Sir, this is a federal matter. We're here for her. He gestured toward Hayes. We have information that she's in this country illegally. Sullivan positioned himself between Morrison and Hayes. The movement was deliberate, a physical barrier that the security cameras captured clearly. Information from whom? That's confidential. You're attempting to detain my staff member based on confidential information. What's your legal authority? ICE has broad authority to enforce immigration law. Do you have a warrant? The question landed in the hospital corridor like a surgical instrument. Precise, unavoidable. We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. You absolutely do need a warrant to enter my facility and detain my staff. Sir, this is Grady Memorial Hospital. It is a healthcare facility. Under Georgia law and federal regulations, you cannot conduct enforcement operations inside a healthcare facility without a judicial warrant. Do you have one? Morrison's face shifted. The certainty flickered. We have authority to detain individuals suspected of immigration violations. On the street, at the border, in locations where you have jurisdiction. This is a hospital. My hospital. And I'm asking you again, do you have a warrant? I don't need. Yes or no? Do you have a warrant authorizing you to enter this facility and detain Adrian Hayes? Silence. I'll take that as no. Sullivan turned slightly to address Hayes without moving from his protective position. Adrian, you don't have to go anywhere with these men. They have no legal authority to detain you without a warrant. Sir, you're interfering with federal officers. I'm exercising my authority as chief medical officer to protect my staff from unlawful detention. There's a difference. He turned back to Morrison. I've been running hospitals for 12 years. Before that, I spent 23 years as a trauma surgeon, including tours in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm. I've faced down situations that would give you nightmares. You don't intimidate me. We're not trying to intimidate. You showed up at my hospital at 6:47 a.m. to drag one of my nurses away based on anonymous information you refused to disclose. Without a warrant. Without probable cause. Without any of the legal protections that American citizens are entitled to. He stepped closer to Morrison. Adrian Hayes was born in Macon, Georgia. Her father worked at the post office for 35 years. She has degrees from Emory University and Georgia State. She has been a registered nurse at this hospital for 8 years. She was just named Georgia Nurse of the Year. His voice dropped. And you're trying to drag her away like a criminal because someone made a phone call. That's not enforcement. That's harassment. Morrison's partner had retreated slightly. His body cam captured his face, the doubt that his colleague refused to acknowledge. Sir, we have our orders. Your orders don't supersede the Constitution. Your orders don't supersede hospital policy. Your orders don't supersede basic human decency. Behind Sullivan, staff had begun gathering. Nurses emerging from the department. Doctors pausing in the corridor. The people who kept the emergency department running through every crisis. They were watching. They were documenting. And they were standing behind their CMO. The staff of Grady Memorial's emergency department formed a line behind Dr. Sullivan. Not organized. Not planned. Simply the organic response of people who recognized injustice and refused to stand silent. Dr. James Chun, emergency physician, 12 years at Grady. He had worked beside Hayes on the pediatric code just hours ago. Nurse practitioner Keisha Williams, who had trained under Hayes when she first joined the department. Respiratory therapist Miguel Santos, who had seen Hayes talk a panicking asthma patient through a crisis with nothing but her voice and her presence. Paramedic Sarah Mitchell, who had brought countless patients through those doors and watched Hayes receive every one with the same competence and compassion. 15 people. Then 20. The corridor filling with medical professionals who knew Adrian Hayes, who had worked beside her, who understood exactly what was happening. Sir, step aside. We're here for her. Morrison's voice had hardened. His patience was ending. His hand moved toward his belt, toward the handcuffs that hung there. I'm not stepping anywhere. This is my hospital. Where's your warrant? The question came from Dr. Chun, repeated from behind Sullivan. The same words. The same demand. Where's your warrant? Nurse Williams. Echoing. Where's your warrant? The phrase rippled through the gathering staff. A chorus of healthcare workers who had spent their careers protecting people, who understood that protection sometimes meant standing in the way of power. We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. You need a warrant to enter this facility. Sullivan's voice cut through the chorus. This is a healthcare institution. We have patients inside who are protected by privacy laws. We have staff who are protected by labor laws. You cannot simply walk in here and take people. Sir, last warning. Move aside or you'll be charged with obstruction. Obstruction of what? You have no warrant. You have no probable cause. You have an anonymous tip about a woman who was born in Georgia, educated in Georgia, and has served this hospital for 8 years. He stood his ground. I've faced down insurgent fire in Iraq. I've operated on soldiers while mortars landed outside the tent. You think the threat of obstruction charges is going to make me abandon my staff? Morrison reached for his handcuffs. You're being detained for interfering with federal officers. Then you'll have to detain all of us. Dr. Chin stepped forward. Beside Sullivan, shoulder to shoulder. You'll have to detain me too. Nurse Williams stepped forward. And me? Santos. Mitchell. Others whose names would later fill the witness list. 23 medical professionals stood between Morrison and Hayes. 23 people who had chosen healthcare because they believed in protecting others. 23 witnesses with phones raised, documenting everything. Morrison's partner had gone pale. Derek, we should call this in. This isn't. We're not equipped for this. Shut up. There are 20 people recording us. This is going to be everywhere. I said shut up. Sullivan watched the exchange. The fracture between the partners. The doubt that was finally breaking through the certainty. Agent Morrison, I'm going to give you one opportunity to end this without consequences. Leave this hospital. Verify your information through proper channels. If you have legitimate cause to investigate Adrian Hayes, come back with a warrant signed by a federal judge. I don't need a judge's permission. In America, you do? That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. He held out his hand. I'm Dr. Michael Sullivan, Chief Medical Officer. 35 years of service to medicine. And I'm telling you, as someone who has never backed down from a fight in my entire career, you will not take my nurse. Morrison stared at the hand, at the staff behind him, at the cameras recording from every angle. Then he reached past Sullivan. Morrison's hand closed around Hayes' arm before Sullivan could block him. The grab was aggressive, the grip of someone who had decided that force would succeed where authority had failed. You're coming with me, Hayes cried out. Not from pain, from shock. The sudden violence after the long negotiation. The hand on her arm pulling her forward. Sullivan moved instantly. 35 years of surgical precision applied to a different kind of intervention. His hand closed around Morrison's wrist. Let go of her. You're obstructing. You're assaulting a healthcare worker. In a hospital. Without a warrant. Let go. The security camera captured the moment. Morrison's hand on Hayes' arm. Sullivan's hand on Morrison's wrist. The physical confrontation that transformed a civil rights violation into assault. Morrison pulled Hayes toward him. Sullivan held firm. Let go of her right now. She's coming with us. She's not going anywhere. You have no legal authority. You have no warrant. You have no right to put your hands on my staff. The staff behind Sullivan surged forward. Not to attack, to document, to witness, to ensure that whatever happened next would be seen by everyone. Dr. Chin's phone captured Morrison's face, the particular expression of someone whose control was slipping. Nurse Williams's phone captured Hayes, her arm in Morrison's grip, her face showing the fear that 8 years of emergency nursing hadn't prepared her for. Security guard Webb was on his radio. We need Atlanta police at emergency entrance. Federal agents assaulting staff. Repeat, federal agents assaulting staff. Morrison's partner had stopped trying to help. He stood frozen, the posture of someone watching his career collapse in real time. Derek, let her go. This isn't worth it. Shut up. Look around. 20 cameras. 30 witnesses. Atlanta PD is coming. Let her go. She's an illegal. She's a citizen. Look at her badge. Look at her credentials. She works here. The partner's voice cracked with desperation. Let her go before this gets worse. Sullivan spoke directly to Morrison. His voice had dropped to the register he used in operating rooms. Calm. Absolute. The voice that commanded life and death. Agent Morrison, you are assaulting a registered nurse who has committed no crime. You are doing so without a warrant, without probable cause, and in violation of this facility's status as a protected healthcare institution. He tightened his grip on Morrison's wrist. If you don't release her in the next 5 seconds, I will personally ensure that you face federal charges, civil liability, and the end of your career. You can't threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm informing. 5. Morrison's grip remained. 4. The staff pressed closer. 3. His partner stepped back, physically distancing himself from the confrontation. 2. Morrison looked at Sullivan. At the cameras. At the staff. At the hospital entrance that had become a battlefield. 1. His hand released Hayes' arm. She stumbled backward into the arms of her colleagues. Nurse Williams caught her. Dr. Chin steadied her. Morrison stood in the center of the corridor, surrounded by medical professionals, documented by cameras, his authority shattered. This isn't over. You're right. Sullivan's voice carried no triumph, only certainty. It isn't. Because by the time I'm done, you're going to wish you had never walked into my hospital. He turned to Webb. No one leaves until Atlanta police arrive. These men are going to explain exactly what they were doing here. Morrison's face had gone gray. His partner was already on the phone, not to ICE, but to a lawyer. The assault was documented. The violation was recorded. And the consequences were just beginning. The calls went out simultaneously. Hospital administration contacted the city attorney's office within 4 minutes of Morrison releasing Hayes' arm. The words "federal agents assaulting staff" triggered immediate response. The mayor's office received notification 6 minutes after that. The chief of staff, himself a former prosecutor, recognized the political and legal implications instantly. Media calls started at 7:15 a.m. WSB-TV, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, CNN's Atlanta Bureau. The phrase, "ICE agents detain nurse at Grady Memorial," spread across assignment desks like wildfire. By 7:30 a.m., the first news van arrived. By 7:45 a.m., there were 4. By 8 a.m., the story had gone national. Morrison and his partner remained at the hospital, not because they chose to, but because Atlanta police had arrived and were taking statements. The crime scene had been established. The witnesses had been identified. The investigation had begun. Hayes sat in Dr. Sullivan's office, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought, hands shaking around a cup of coffee she couldn't drink. "I don't understand." Her voice was quiet, shattered. "I was just leaving work. I was just going home to my daughters." Sullivan sat across from her. The adrenaline of the confrontation was fading, replaced by the familiar exhaustion of crises survived. "You didn't do anything wrong, Adrian. This wasn't about you." "Then what was it about?" "It was about someone making a phone call. Someone who decided you didn't belong here. Someone who weaponized federal agents against you." Hayes looked up. The realization was settling in. An anonymous tip. "Someone called IC about me." "Yes." "Who? What?" "We don't know yet. But we're going to find out." The hospital's legal counsel arrived at 8:12 a.m. Elena Rodriguez, corporate attorney, 15 years of healthcare law, the person who handled Grady's most sensitive legal matters. "I've spoken with the city attorney and our outside counsel. We're treating this as an assault on a hospital employee, a violation of healthcare facility protections, and a civil rights case." "What about the agents?" "Atlanta PD is handling the criminal investigation. FBI Civil Rights Division has been notified. The U.S. Attorney's Office is being briefed as we speak." Sullivan nodded. The machinery of justice was engaging, slowly, but inevitably. What does Adrian need to do? Nothing right now. She's the victim. She cooperated with legitimate requests. She didn't resist. She didn't obstruct. She was assaulted by a federal agent without legal authority. Hayes looked up. "I need to call my mother. My daughters are going to see this on the news." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Sullivan walked Hayes to a private office, away from the cameras, away from the chaos, away from the story that was already spreading across every screen in Atlanta. "Call your mother. Tell your girls that mommy is okay. Then get some rest. We're going to handle the rest." "Dr. Sullivan?" "Yes. Thank you. For standing in front of me. For not letting them take me." Sullivan's expression softened. The commander becoming, for a moment, simply a colleague. "That's what we do here, Adrian. We protect each other. We always have. We always will." He closed the door gently. Then he walked back to the emergency entrance, where the cameras were waiting, where the questions were multiplying, where the story of the warrant that never existed was about to become national news. "I'll make one statement. Then we're done until our attorneys advise otherwise." The cameras focused. The microphones extended. And Dr. Michael Sullivan prepared to tell the world what had happened in his hospital. The investigation revealed exactly how thin the pretext had been. The anonymous tip had been traced within 72 hours. A phone call from a burner purchased at a gas station indicator. The caller, later identified through voice analysis and cell tower data, was Gerald Whitmore, a 47-year-old accountant from Buckhead. Whitmore had been in Grady's emergency department 3 weeks earlier. His wife had presented with chest pain. The wait had been 4 hours, standard for a level 1 trauma center during a busy night. but unacceptable to a man who believed his wife's discomfort should have superseded everyone else's emergencies. The nurse who had triaged his wife was Adrian Hayes. Hayes had been professional, courteous. She had explained the wait times, provided updates, ensured that Mrs. Whitmore was monitored appropriately. The wife had been discharged with a diagnosis of acid reflux, uncomfortable but not life-threatening. Gerald Whitmore had decided that the wait was Hayes' fault. He had decided that her professionalism was attitude. He had decided that a black nurse had disrespected his wife. He had called ICE. The anonymous tip alleged that Hayes was an illegal immigrant using stolen credentials. No evidence. No basis. Just the rage of a man who believed a nurse should have prioritized his wife over dying patients. Agent Derek Morrison had responded without verification. No check of nursing board records. No call to the hospital. No basic investigative work that would have confirmed Hayes' citizenship in under 5 minutes. His case file showed a pattern of similar responses. 14 prior enforcement actions based on anonymous tips, all targeting Black or Hispanic professionals at healthcare facilities, schools, and government offices. All unfounded. All conducted without warrants or proper verification. His social media accounts completed the picture. Posts about anchor babies taking professional jobs. Comments about diversity quotas in healthcare. Membership in online groups where users shared strategies for reporting suspicious workers to immigration authorities. Text messages to fellow agents revealed the methodology. Got a tip about a nurse at Grady. Black, probably illegal. Worth checking out. Healthcare is full of them. Fake credentials everywhere. Easy bust. They're always scared. Just show up and they fold. Hayes hadn't folded. Sullivan hadn't let her. The FBI Civil Rights Division opened a formal investigation within the week. The charges being considered: deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful entry into a protected healthcare facility. Gerald Whitmore, the anonymous tipster, was also under investigation, filing false reports with federal agencies. Conspiracy to deprive civil rights. The weaponization of immigration enforcement against innocent Americans. Both men would face federal charges. But the investigation revealed something larger than individual misconduct. It revealed a system where anonymous tips could trigger enforcement actions without verification, where agents could enter hospitals and grab nurses based on phone calls they never checked, where the burden of proof fell on the accused rather than the accuser. That system was about to change. Dr. Sullivan provided testimony over 3 days. He described the confrontation with the precision that 35 years of medicine had honed. Every word, every gesture, every moment that had transformed an ordinary morning into a constitutional crisis. "I've spent my career protecting patients," he stated in his deposition. That morning, I learned that sometimes you have to protect staff too, from people who are supposed to be enforcing the law, but have forgotten what the law actually requires. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Morrison was indicted on all counts. Whitmore was indicted on conspiracy charges. Both would face trial, and the system that had enabled them would face the scrutiny it had avoided for years. The federal courtroom in Atlanta drew national attention. A nurse nearly dragged from her hospital. A CMO who refused to step aside. The story had become a symbol of everything wrong with enforcement without oversight. Adrian Hayes testified on the second day. She wore her nursing scrubs, the same seal blue she had worn the morning of the incident. Her hospital badge was clipped to her chest, her credentials visible to everyone in the courtroom. I had just finished a 12-hour shift. We had 3 trauma codes that night. A 4-year-old boy who drowned. We brought him back. I was exhausted. I was ready to go home to my daughters. What happened when you reached the exit? Agent Morrison was waiting. He told me I was in the country illegally. He said he had information. Did you understand what he meant? No. I was born in Macon, Georgia. I've never lived anywhere else. I don't know any other country. The security footage was played for the jury. They watched Morrison approach. They watched Sullivan emerge through the doors. They watched the staff gather behind their CMO. They watched Morrison reach past Sullivan and grab Hayes' arm. "Ms. Hayes, what were you thinking when Agent Morrison grabbed you?" "I was thinking about my daughters. Zoe and Zara. They're 6 years old. They were waiting for me at my mother's house. I was thinking, if he takes me, who's going to tell them where mommy went?" She paused. The courtroom was silent. "I've spent 8 years taking care of people in their worst moments. I've held hands with people who were dying. I've told families that their loved ones didn't make it. I never thought I would be the one being grabbed. Being taken. Dr. Sullivan testified next. He wore his white coat over a charcoal suit, the attire of authority that had defined his career. When I arrived at the entrance, I saw Agent Morrison blocking Adrienne's path. I saw the fear on her face, and I knew exactly what was happening. What did you do? I put myself between them. I asked the only question that mattered. Where's your warrant? What was the agent's response? He said he didn't need one. He was wrong. He looked at the jury. I've spent 35 years in medicine. I served in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm. I've protected patients from infection, from injury, from death. That morning, I protected my nurse from an agent who had forgotten that authority comes with accountability. The hospital staff testified one by one. Dr. Chun described the pediatric code that Hayes had led hours before the confrontation. Nurse Williams described the mentor who had shaped her career. Security guard Webb described the nurse who had saved his mother's life. Gerald Whitmore, the anonymous tipster, testified under subpoena. His motivation crumbled under cross-examination. You called ICE because you were angry about a wait time? My wife was in pain. So you tried to have the nurse deported? I thought. I was told. You were told nothing. You assumed. You decided that a black nurse who didn't prioritize your wife must not be American. Whitmore had no answer. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Morrison and Whitmore both. Hayes watched from the gallery as the verdicts were read. Her colleagues surrounded her, the same people who had formed a line in the hospital corridor, who had refused to let her face injustice alone. Justice had been delivered by the system they had forced to work. The sentencing hearing brought closure that the trial had only begun. Agent Morrison, you were entrusted with the authority to enforce immigration law. Instead, you used that authority to terrorize a healthcare worker at her place of employment. You did so without a warrant, without probable cause, and without any regard for the constitutional protections that every American is entitled to. The judge reviewed the pre-sentencing materials with visible contempt. When you grabbed Adrienne Hayes, you weren't just assaulting a nurse. You were attacking the healthcare system itself. You were teaching every medical professional in this country that they might be targeted next. You were undermining public trust in both immigration enforcement and healthcare institutions. Morrison's sentence, 6 years federal prison. Enhanced for assault. Enhanced for violation of healthcare facility protections. Enhanced for the documented pattern of warrantless enforcement actions. Gerald Whitmore received 2 years for conspiracy and filing false federal reports. Both were led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement followed within 3 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $11.9 million rather than face a trial that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. Hayes directed the distribution with the precision she applied to emergency nursing. For $1 million to establish the Sullivan-Hayes Healthcare Workers Protection Fund, providing legal defense for medical professionals targeted by pretextual enforcement actions. $3 million to nursing scholarships at Emory University and Georgia State, ensuring that the next generation of nurses would have the support she had earned through struggle. $2 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability. The remaining funds secured her daughter's futures. College. Security. The stability that single motherhood and nursing salaries had never quite guaranteed. Dr. Sullivan received the American Hospital Association's Distinguished Service Award for his actions that morning. He accepted it at a ceremony that drew healthcare executives from across the country. I didn't do anything exceptional. I did what any leader should do when their people are threatened. I stood in the way. He looked at the audience. Every one of you has staff who depend on you. Staff who trust that when they come to work, they'll be protected. That trust is sacred. It's the foundation of everything we do. He held up the award. This belongs to everyone who stood behind me that morning. The doctors, the nurses, the technicians, the security guards, the people who said, "You'll have to detain all of us," and meant it. ICE entered a consent decree requiring warrants for all enforcement actions at healthcare facilities. The policy that Morrison had violated was now explicitly codified, backed by the legal precedent that Sullivan's refusal had established. Hayes returned to work 2 weeks after the incident. Same department, same shifts, same patients who needed the nurse her colleagues called the heart of the ER. Her twins started first grade that fall. They knew something had happened at Mommy's hospital. Something that had put her face on television. Something that had made people call her a hero. Hayes didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a nurse who had almost been taken from her children, who had been saved by colleagues who refused to look away. Every morning, she walked through the same emergency entrance where Morrison had grabbed her arm. The same doors, the same corridor, the same hospital where she had spent 8 years saving lives. The security camera still recorded from above. The red, emergency sign still glowed. The staff still gathered for shift change. But something had changed. A precedent had been set. A line had been drawn. Where's your warrant? The question that had cost ICE $11.9 million. The question that had protected a nurse from agents without authority. The question that Dr. Michael Sullivan would ask again, if anyone was ever foolish enough to try. No one had been. No one would be. Some lessons, once taught, are remembered.
Facts are preserved in the records. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to stay connected to the vault.